Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, do we have another great show for you. I have to tell you something, a confession, if you will. I was a procrastinator. And if you ask my wife, she still will say I probably do procrastinate still a little bit, but I've improved this. And I have to believe, and as a psychological professional, I have to believe that we all on some level procrastinate, especially when it comes to the difficult things that we face. A lot of times we don't want to have the hard conversations that we need to have. Who likes to clean out the attic? Anybody out there? Raise your hands if you do, right? I mean, there are just a number of things that we don't want to do. How about your finances, right? Taking a look at those, right? Admitting to yourself that it's upside down and backwards, right? How about that book you said you were always going to write that you never decided to write, right? All those things, right? We put them off. It's procrastination. What if there was a system that you could break your procrastination? What if you had that? Would that interest you? I think it probably would, right? Well, my guest today, matter of fact, number one international best-selling author, Scott Allan, joins me actually from Japan, right? Just Japan, is that where you're at, Scott? Okay. And here's the book. The book is How to Beat Procrastination. Do the Hard Things First is the name of the book. I've already got a client who's already purchased this book. The secondary title, How to Win Over Procrastination and Master the Habit of Doing Difficult Work. I'm telling you, this is an absolutely outstanding book. This is a top shelf book for me. Because this book is not just a book that you read once. And Scott says it in the book. This is a book that you're going to need to go back to, and you're going to have to keep going back to it and keep going back to it and keep going back to it, because his 22-step process, and I know that sounds a lot. Don't get overwhelmed by that, right? Which we'll talk about overwhelm probably at the show, hopefully, as well. Don't get overwhelmed by that, because it shouldn't be. But it takes a process, right? To get through this. Before we get to him, though, let's do what we do every week, right? I walk you through the fact that we are 4-part people: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people. And we have you check in every week as to where you're at on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, 10 being, it just doesn't get any better, 5 being average. So for instance, what number would you give yourself physically for getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, eating right, getting enough exercise? How would you evaluate yourself? Now, look, if you've got a low score, all right, I don't want you to beat yourself up and go, no, that's not what we want to do. What we want you to do is we want you to look at that as a starting point. One of the things that you have to do is you have to forgive yourself, which is something Scott also says in his book, right? It's actually right out of the gate. He says, you know what, you got to forgive yourself. You got to have a clean slate every day, right? Well, that's what I want you to do when you think about these numbers. This is where you're at today. This is where you start. This is where you work from. So if you're a 2, let's just try to get to a 2.5. All right. Let's just do something small, something small. Maybe you're watching the show eating a bag of chips. How about we put them down? Right? How about we do that? How about we put them down and get a bag of carrots or something else in the fridge, right? That's a great start, okay? How about getting to sleep a little earlier, right? Just something little, right? You don't have to do major. We're not trying to get from a 2 to a 10. We're just trying to get to the next level. So that's your first number. Second number is your mental intellectual number. Look, if we're not growing, we're dying, especially mentally and intellectually. So we need to take charge and command of our own mental intellectual growth. That means, what can I do to grow in my business and in my life, in my relationships? What are you doing? You know what a great thing to do to enhance that? Really easy? Read a book. That's a great way to enhance your intellectual capacity, because you can't be a couch potato thinking you're going to absorb information. You have to be an active participant in your mental intellectual growth. All right. So that's the second number, whatever that number is. Right. Third number is the emotional number. And listen, Dr. Daniel Goleman has written all sorts of things on emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. The fact of the matter is, to make it real simple on this show, right? How would you evaluate yourself in 2 areas? One, being able to control your emotions under stress and pressure, right? Have you ever been hangry? How did that go? All right. And then 2, how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of another person? That second one may be harder than the first one, right? The fact of the matter is, if you were to evaluate on yourself on those 2 things, what number would you give yourself? And what could you do to improve it, right? Is it, actually, Scott has a chapter in here, a set of chapters on self-control, right? We don't talk about self-control a lot, but the fact of the matter is self-control is so important to all our growth, but emotional growth especially. All right, so that's your third number. Now your fourth area is the spiritual area. I know some of you are going to say to me, Jay, the spiritual thing. No. Well, we are spiritual beings. Sorry, we connect on a spiritual level. We remove the physical, mental, and emotional. We still stay connected. The fact of the matter is we live our life by faith. You drank your cup of coffee this morning believing it was poisonous. You pushed the button on your car believing it was going to start. You saw the sign that said walk on the street and you believed you could walk across there without getting hit by a car. You made plans for the future believing that they were going to happen. And you know what? That's faith. And that's spiritual. And then what brings you back to a place of calmness and peace in the midst of chaos? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it meditation? Is it something else? And how's that working for you? Right? That's the question. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate that? Well, those four areas are like errors, and the numbers are like air in the tires of your car. If one tire is too low, right, what happens? Well, it's harder to steer the car, isn't it? And if all four tires are too low, what happens? Well, eventually over time, you're going to ruin the car. And speaking of somebody who's got his tires to the right height, his name is Scott Allan. His mantra, transforming 10 million lives, one life at a time. He's published in 6 languages, over 200,000 copies sold worldwide. He's on a mission to transform the human potential. Scott is the best-selling author of Fail Big, Relaunch Your Life, and Do the Hard Things First. As a former corporate business trainer in Japan and transformational success strategist, he's invested over 10,000 hours of practice and research into the areas of confidence development and mindset mastery training. With an unrelenting passion for teaching, building critical life skills, and inspiring people around the world to take charge of their lives, he is committed to a path of constant and never-ending self-improvement. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show. Welcome to a new director for the first time, Scott Allan. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here. It's great to be here.
Okay, so let's dig right into this book, because I think there are some things that we need to get out up front. And let's just start with a couple, simple definitions, right? Because, procrastination is a big word, but let's talk about how are you defining procrastination for us through this book?
I think it's a mechanism for putting off things that we have difficulty either starting or finishing. And I think Neil Fiore, he probably has that definition as well in his book, The Now Habit, but that's the definition is basically like it's a mechanism or a strategy basically to put off doing hard things. And we all have, certain behavior patterns that feed into that, which I think we'll probably get into in our call today. But so I look at it as something that, and just to be like right out of the gate too, I think procrastination has a bad rap as something that is a negative behavior, but sometimes it can actually work for you as well, which we'll get into a little bit. And I don't think I really dove into that so much in the book as how it's a good thing for you. So as we discussed earlier, I'm working on a 3rd edition for that, just to cover a little more of the bases. But I discovered I can give people a blueprint for here's how to break your procrastination habit. And I can test that with 100 people, and not everybody's going to get the same results. In fact, some people might fail to get a good result, because at the end of the day, we have to look at, how our behavior is feeding into the procrastination habit and how we can make it work for us, right, instead of against us. So it really becomes a problem when it's it's a self-sabotaging behavior, which is really how it is viewed by most people, I think, and as it should be, because if you are putting off things that you need to get done and you're not doing them, then it becomes a bigger issue. So, and I think we both probably have a couple of stories around that. I'm sure a lot of people have stories right now. Procrastination derailed their best efforts. So.
Absolutely. You and I talked before the show, that it was clearly an issue for me. There's still areas I think I'm a work in progress, actually. How about that? I think there's more work for me to do, for sure. So why do we procrastinate?
Well, there's probably a lot of reasons, but I'll just dive into a little bit of a personal story with myself. So that's the question I had to ask myself is why am I a chronic procrastinator? It really bothered me, because I've been doing it for decades probably. And
Mhm.
it's not like I just woke up and realized it. I've always known it because when things got really hard, and I do consider myself to be a productive person. I mean, I've, written a few books. I've worked really hard most of my life, and I've done a lot of different things. So procrastination wasn't something that held me back from moving forward and succeeding. But I always ask the question is like, if I were to beat that procrastination habit, could I have done more? Could I have been more? Could I have? So that, because my quest is really to become the greatest version of myself, which I think is maybe something that most people are striving for, not all of us. So I really wanted to kind of pull this thing apart and identify, first of all, why am, and here's the thing, is like, I realized when I asked myself the question, it was like, why am I a procrastinator? And suddenly dawned on me like, okay, well, first of all, I'm labeling myself as a procrastinator. So I kind of got into the labels, right? So, and this is what we all do, is like, I am you fill in the blank. And immediately, as soon as you label yourself as something, you will actually start to behave that way. If I say, well, I'm a procrastinator, so that's why I do these things, right? Well, now if I label myself as that thing, I'm probably going to continue to act that way. In other words, I now have an excuse for putting things off. Oh, well, I can do this because I have I'm a procrastinator, or I have ADHD, or whatever it may be. And all those things may be true, but the first thing I had to do was change the label. So I started to I would actually look at myself in the mirror and say, you're not a procrastinator. You're just somebody who uses that behavior to put off the hard things because you're afraid of starting things. And what's even worse, and here's another thing, just going back to your question, why do we procrastinate? One of the reasons is I tend to overwhelm myself with so many projects that I have on the go at the same time. And by the way, I still struggle with this on a daily basis. Like, I'll start a new project every week, realizing there's 6 more behind it that I haven't finished yet, because starting that new thing is exciting. And I know that to finish these other things, it's like, I'm going to have to do the hard work to get them done. It's like, well, maybe I'll just start something new to feel more productive. And then I start that new thing, and that becomes another project in the background that just doesn't get done, or it will get finished. And eventually most of my projects do get finished, but the thing is, they might get finished a year later, when in fact I needed it to be done last week, and that was really where, and that's where I think part of the time management comes in too, because that's one of the, I think that's another reason where people struggle with this, is with effectively managing time, something that I struggle with, again, on a daily basis. And I know, like, in the book, I talk about time blocking, managing your time and things like that. The truth is, I've never been very good at managing my time. I watch, I see other people, like, they're like, I look at their Google calendars and everything's all scheduled out, and time blocked and color coded. And I'm just going, wow, like, I want to do that. And I try it for like 2 days. And next thing I know, I'm off chasing wild rabbits again. And I forgot to do I forgot to block out my schedule. So I end up doing a bunch of things, which is like a form of, I think they call it productive procrastination, where I'm doing things that I feel really busy doing all these things. At the end of the day, I'm exhausted. And when I look back to, what did I accomplish today? Did I do that one hard thing I was supposed to do? Oh, I didn't, but I did these 10 other things that probably didn't need to be worked on at all. They could have waited till, whenever. So that was really where the concept of like doing that hard thing really came around, because it's like, well, if I do one hard thing every day, even if it only takes me 10 minutes, right? And maybe you're doing one a week. I don't know. It could be one a day, it could be one a week, but I look at it as the long term. Like, if you look at doing one hard thing every morning for 1 year, you've got a lot of things you've done, right? So we have to look at it that way. It's like just committing to, again, it might just be something that takes you 10 minutes. It might be that hard phone call you have to make, that hard email you have to write. I put those things off all the time. Ooh, I don't want to call the bank about my credit card. Maybe I'll just not pay it for another month, and that's actually how I'll actually, I pay my bills for the most part, but there are a couple of times where I got myself into trouble because of that thinking, like, oh, I don't want to, yeah, go down, go down to the bank, go down to the government office, talk to people about this hard thing that I didn't do, and they're gonna probably, yell at me or whatever. And I start to make up these scenarios in my mind. When in fact, if I just gone down and done that thing, it would have been over in an hour. I would have gotten the thing resolved. But the thing is like, we don't think about that. We think about before doing the hard thing, we try to talk ourselves out of doing it to avoid the discomfort of putting ourselves in a hard situation. When in fact, and what I realized just, from going through my own pain with this is like, when I actually moved forward and did that thing, I did just feel better. I was a better person. Like my character was growing, every time I put myself in a position of discomfort. And I'm really like a person of discipline too. Like, I mean, I've read all the books like Extreme Ownership and all those books on discipline. So I love discipline, and I've always been very disciplined, especially, I don't think I've ever missed a day of work, except if I was sick once or twice, and always been there and always shown up. But the hardest thing to do was to show up for myself. So maybe a lot of people can relate to that. It's like, I can show up to work. I can show up for somebody else and get the job done, get the work done that they need done. But when it comes to my own thing, I tended to fail miserably. And that, again, really bothered me. And I still do that to a certain extent today, which is why, like, I think you mentioned, like, you have to keep going back to the book and reading through it. And I think that's a good point. I think because the reason is we have to continue to go back and, tackle this behavior, because it's not like a one and done thing, right? As soon as you stop doing, as soon as you stop building out your daily schedule, well, now you're back to just doing things randomly. As soon as you stop working out at the gym, my default is to eat a bunch of junk food and watch Netflix, right? So I like to go to the gym so that later when I am watching Netflix, I'm like, okay, well, I did my thing today. I went to the gym, I had an hour workout. So, this is my reward, right? So it's important to reward ourselves as well. Yeah. And just the last thing I was just going to mention too. Yeah. There are 21, 22 steps in the book, I think. And just so everybody knows, like, you don't have to do all 22 steps to succeed. Like the steps are actually broken up so that you can just, you can bash them together. You can do 2 or 3 of them. Like one of the steps is maybe just like the 5-minute rule, which I think James Clear talks about. It might be the 2-minute rule, but it's basically like just taking 5 minutes out to work on that thing, to get started on the thing is the thing, So you can take, you don't have to do these steps in any particular order. You can actually, I do recommend like reading through them first though, and as we mentioned, like I am working on a 3rd edition of this book, which is going to be way better. Like, I mean, the 2nd version is really good. I think the 3rd version is going to really I'm putting a lot of work into it. So I'm hoping and the course is coming with it as well. So I'm building out the course as well, because I wasn't expecting people to really, I put this book out, to be honest. I think I wrote it for myself when I wrote it, because I came out of a bad year with COVID, as we all did. And my procrastination was at its all-time high or low, however you look at it. It's like I wasn't doing anything. I didn't write a book in 2020. And I was like, I have to get myself out of this slump. And so I wrote that book because somebody I think my mentor had said, what's like the number one behavior you would break if you could? And I thought, well, it's got to be my chronic procrastination. And to define chronic procrastination, it's something where that's a different level. That's where, like, let's just say, for example, you have a credit card bill of, $5,000 you've got to pay off, or they're going to cancel your credit. That's pretty serious, right? The chronic procrastinator in me will actually look for ways to not pay it off. Not because I don't want to pay my bills, because that's just like, maybe I have to drive across town and pay the bill or whatever it is, right? But I'll look for ways to put off pretty much anything that is, uncomfortable. So it's like avoiding comfort or avoiding the discomfort at all costs, and you end up, the chronic procrastinator just ends up on this path of self-sabotage where they don't really see it until eventually, like, they've done something that they can't walk away from, and hopefully it's nothing life-threatening, but it could be like you just messed up your finances, or you crashed your company. Like, I mean, and these things happen all the time. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
His name is Scott Allan. The book is entitled Do the Hard Things First, How to Win Over Procrastination, Master the Habit of Doing Difficult Work. You were listening to him here on a new direction. Hey, folks, my physical therapist, I think this should be yours too, by the way, Epic PT, Epic Physical Therapy. Whether you're coming from an injury, surgery, suffering everyday aches and pains, having difficulty performing activities of daily living, are unable to perform athletic activities, or just looking to improve how you feel. You may even be a professional athlete just wanting to improve your sport. Listen, the elite team at Epic Physical Therapy will provide you with a customized treatment program that's just specifically designed for you. So when you're ready for your epic relief, epic recovery, and epic results, don't look any further. Go to epicpt.com. It's epicpt.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors, for more than 39 years, they've been helping people all over the world transition in life. And you say, well, I thought they're in real estate. How do they help people transition? Well, if you think about it, every place you've ever lived has been a life's transition, and they know how to take the stress out of that and help make that as smooth a process as possible. So when you're ready to make your next life transition, whether you're selling a home or buying your next home, go to lindacraft.com. It's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Scott Allan, #1 international best-selling author. Do the hard things first, How to Win Procrastination and Master the Habit of Doing Difficult Work. Fabulous book. We're just getting really started here. Before we go on into these 22 steps, there's something that you said in the introduction I just think is too important to ignore. And that is, it's a subheading that says what you need to succeed. And you give 3 things. It's showing up every day with a clean slate, leaning into self-forgiveness, and an attitude open to learning. Talk about those 3 things, but specifically why leaning in to self-forgiveness is so important to this process of breaking our procrastination.
Yeah, because first of all, when it comes to when you're actually really facing up to, I think, the damage that's been done. So everybody may have their own level of damage, like it depends on your situation. But the first thing we do is we guilt ourselves. It's like, oh, I'm such a loser. I can't believe I knew this report had to be done by Friday. I waited until Thursday night and I thought I could get it done and I didn't get it done. And now, my job's on the line or something like that, or my client fired me, like whatever it could be. So when something, and it doesn't have to go to that extent, but we tend to, we guilt ourselves into feeling really bad because it's, the procrastination habit is something we could have done something about it. We didn't. And now, you're in and then what happens is like, you're like, okay, I'm never going to do it again. The next time it's going to be different. And the next time rolls around, you got something else to do, a deadline, whatever it may be. And you do it again and you do it again. And the behavior repeats itself. So the reason I said, you have to forgive yourself for the past, because first of all, we can't go back to yesterday and change what whatever it is, what you did or did not do. You cannot change that. Of course, we know that, but we tend to go back to the past and go, we actually look for the evidence. I've got a lot of evidence to prove why I'm such a loser, why I didn't get these things done. I didn't have the proper education, whatever it might be. We start to come up with all of the excuses, and that weight right there, like that that reinforces the behavior to continue. So you have to start from a place of forgiveness. It's like, okay, whatever happened last week, last month, last year, that is over with. Today is the new me. And from now on, and this is, I would recommend anybody to actually grab a pen and paper, a journal, preferably. I have these little journals I buy online for like $10 and whatever it is, but just grab something and write this down every morning. Actually, it's a really good practice. Like, I am free today because, and just make a list of the reasons why you're free. Because procrastination, the habit of it, or the behavior, I should say, if we look at it as a negative behavior, it's really holding you prisoner, right? But the thing is, you have the keys to unlock it, right? And that's kind of what I go through in the book is, I'm giving people a formula. I'm giving them the tools, the keys to unlock this behavior. Because here's the thing is like, I think it's like an addiction as well. It's like, you need to go into, I've been through addiction recovery in my past too. And I realized, like, just because I went to a few meetings, it wasn't, I wasn't cured, right? It was something like I always had to be working on myself. If I don't, I go back to the original state that got me there in the first place, which is, and I don't want to go back to that. I want to keep moving forward. So when you're working with procrastination or any kind of negative behavior, it's the same thing. It's like, if you stay stuck practicing that behavior, you'll get really good at it. I mean, I've mastered procrastination. In other words, I've gotten really good at putting off these things. And by the way, I still do this to this day. You mentioned something interesting where you said your wife's always keeping you on point with your behavior. My partner does the same thing. She's an action taker, right? So it's just the other day, she's like, we have to call the credit card company because like it was something, or we always have to call a credit card company, a bank, something about my business, because there's always somebody we've always got to be contacting or going somewhere. And as soon as she says that, in me, it triggers like this anxiety or fear of like, oh, calling another institution. I have a fear around this. So it may always be a thing, but left to my own devices, I will not do it, right? Even though I know I have to do it. And she's like, nope, we're on the phone right now. And 5 minutes later, she's got them on the phone. 10 minutes later, we have the situation resolved. And then it's on to the next thing, right? It's like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, why can't I do that? And I realized like, well, it's not that I can't do it. And I think anybody who's listening to it, this is why we guilt ourselves into thinking we can't do these things. I'm a loser. I wish I could, or maybe if I just tried harder, if I tried to manage my time and all these things. But at the end of the day, we need to reach out and get help with a lot of things. I need help. I need someone to actually show me how to build out my calendar, and it's not like I don't have a lot of examples. I have courses and books on time management. It's all the information is out there. Yet when I look at it, I feel overwhelmed because I overwhelm myself with all the information. And then I just go back to my regular pattern of doing things kind of, haphazardly. And, I don't really get onto the path of, doing things right away. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to mention like, I think again, like you may be kind of trapped in this behavior where you're always putting things off, but here's the thing, like I need to keep things simple for myself because yes, I do have ADHD and all these things, but I used to use that as an excuse to not do things like, oh, well, the reason I do it is because of this. And again, putting a label on myself, which may or may not be true, but recognize that it's just an excuse so that I can kind of feed into this behavior which by the way is very familiar. And that's the thing too, is like, that's the I think the very elusive piece of like, self-sabotaging yourself is like it feels so normal you don't really see it happening, and I mean I've self-sabotaged my finances again and again and again until somebody would say, well, if you just had a little system you could do like this and this, you could actually stop doing that behavior. I didn't see it as a simple process, but when I actually implemented this little system they're recommending, it's like, oh, okay, it wasn't so hard after all. So sometimes like we need people to guide us. We need to look for those tools that are out there where we can actually just practice it. And again, like, starting something. So the 5-minute rule, 10 minutes, whatever it takes, I have a timer here where like when I need to start something that I've been putting off for a long time, it's like, I'm going to work on it for 5 or 10 minutes and see what happens. And what normally happens is momentum kicks in after 10 minutes. In other words, I actually get focused. It's really hard for those first 10 or 15 minutes. But then once if you get into it, maybe you can stick with that thing for 30 minutes to an hour. And you might even get that thing done. Give you a quick example. One of the things that I always put off are filling out forms, application forms. Those are important. Maybe we need a loan for something or whatever it may be. But I will take that application form and put it in a drawer somewhere so I can't see it and just kind of like forget that it's there until eventually someone comes looking for it, right? When in fact, all I had to do is maybe it would take me 15, 20 minutes to fill out that form. What if I just did one piece of it every day? And this is what I did. She has like on day 1, I wrote my name on the form. On day 2, I wrote in my address. And day 3, I just kept filling in this information piece by piece. And I know it sounds kind of silly, that should be an easy thing to do, but everybody has their devices, things they struggle with. And sometimes you just need to take it piece by piece, like one step at a time, baby steps, is really how we have to approach this instead of, and here's what I would do is like, also coming back to the forgiveness piece, I'll guilt myself into all the reasons why I can't do all these things. So in order to feel better, I'll put all these things on my to-do list. I'll make all tomorrow's going to be the most productive day ever. I've got 20 things I'm going to get done. And I overwhelmed myself to the point where maybe I did one or two of those things on the list because I didn't do the rest of them. It's like, oh, there, you see, I failed again. I didn't get all those, 20, 25 items done. So what I do every day, I just write down 3 things that I want to get done for the day. I might only get one of them done, but at least I got one of them done. Now I've only got 2 that I didn't get finished. And maybe that one thing I got done, by the way, was an important piece. So I usually will, I can't remember who it was, but I think it's like the, listing out your 6 priority tasks for the day. I think that's actually a lot. I do 3, because I tried doing the 6 priority tasks. And again, I was only getting 1 or 2 of them done every day. And I realized like that was just overwhelming. So I would just do the 3. I write them down every night. In the morning, I have some direction because I need, like a lot of people, I need direction as to what I'm working on for that day. Otherwise, I just go, I've got a million tabs open on my computer. I'm all over the place, jumping from this to that. And again, I could say, well, it's ADHD and I'm a procrastinator, but no, it's just because you're setting yourself up for failure by having all these tabs open, having this long to-do list. To get rid of the tabs and then just get 1 or 2 things on your list, and just trying to make it simple. I think that's the purpose of the book, was really just to, not to provide people with like they have to do these 22 steps. It's like you can pick one of those things and just test it, because in the end, we just have to test what works for us. I may never get to the point where I'm building out this great Google Calendar and I'm following it like, this hour I'm doing this and this hour I'm doing this. I've tested it, and what actually works best for me is when I have one thing to do throughout the day and I'm just working on that one thing for 3 or 4 hours or 2 hours. I find, like, to me, I get into the flow, right? And if I'm working on that thing, well, I'm not procrastinating because I'm working on the thing I should be working on, and hey, maybe it's not the hardest thing, but maybe it's something I actually enjoy working on, and that's the thing too, is like, you have to have fun with this too. It's like, there's also fun procrastination. It's like, okay, well, I know I have this hard thing over here I need to do, but I'm gonna work on this first because I really want to work on it. Could be a new book, could be something, whatever it is, right? But after I'm done that thing, then I may go over and do the hard thing first. So it's not like you have to wake up every morning and do that hard thing first. If you're really struggling with it and you're not doing it, pick one thing on your list, and just as soon as you're working on that one thing, cross it off so that mentally you can be like, okay, you can check that off, it's like mental note, I actually got something done today. And, you can go over and do that one hard thing that you really have been putting off, you can tackle that later, because now you're actually feeling, you're not guilting yourself into not doing anything. Now you've gotten to the point where you're feeling pretty good about your day and you can, move forward with, your plans. So anyway, that was probably a lot to unpack, but just going back to the forgiveness piece, like, just forgive yourself for everything that happened in the past. That is done. Today is the day, right? Today is the day. It's not next week and it's not last week. Like, ask yourself, what is the one thing I can do today that can just move the needle? Because that's like, and when I say move the needle, it might be moving the needle in your relationship, right? It might be moving the needle with your kids, with, in other words, what's the one thing you can do that's going to have that, positive impact that you want? And write that one thing down, just make it very clear. Clarity is the key. And this is why I've always, like, again, when I look back at why all the reasons I procrastinate, there could be 100 reasons, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, how are you feeling? I'm feeling overwhelmed, anxious, fearful of starting this thing because I don't know how to do it. So, and that was one thing that holds me back, is like, I don't actually know how to do this thing. So do I figure it out, or do I find help? Do I outsource it? My business, there's a lot of things I don't know how to do. I have to hire people for it, and I don't always have the money for it or something, right? But it's like, if I can't do this thing, it needs to get done, because you may not be the person that has to do it. Maybe you've got, could be your spouse, your partner, it could be, maybe it's something you have to ask one of your kids, who knows, but the goal is just to get it done, and if you can, I definitely recommend, like, going through that list and seeing, like, okay, is this something I need to do, or can I ask someone to do it? It's like, one of my favorite books is like Who Not How, it's like, who can I ask to help me with this thing? And hey, if you can get someone to help you with it, great. You can just, have someone else working together with you on this thing. Like, my partner helps me with, taking action, calling all the people that need to be called and getting things done. because if it was left to my own devices, I'd be sitting around with people emailing me and calling me and asking me, where's that thing you promised us, because I think the anxiety that we feel, by the way, that's a really powerful trigger, right? So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, by the way, I don't do overwhelmed very well. And I think that if you're feeling overwhelmed right there, that's a sign or a trigger that you're kind of like, you're in a bit of a mess, right? And you need to eliminate the overwhelm. For me, it was like I had like 9, 10 projects on the go. And I realized, like, instead of creating a new project, I need to get rid of the projects I've created. In other words, either finish them or abandon them. I'm not very good at throwing things away like that. So I just decided for the next month or two, I'm just going to not create anything new. I'm going to get rid of all the projects. In other words, finish them one at a time. And then I'm just going to focus in on the 1 or 2 projects that I really need to move things forward, because I don't like being overwhelmed. Overwhelm leads to procrastination. Procrastination leads to not getting things done and, watching more of Netflix. And by the way, I love Netflix, but when I'm spending 4 hours a day on that and not getting anything done, then again, that's probably my way of dealing with, dealing with all the things that, basically just, ignoring the things that need to get done and running away. So.
Mm. In the few minutes that you just spoke, you hit about 10 of the 22 steps, which is really cool. So I'm going to hit some of the ones that you didn't hit. All right.
Sure.
Because some of them I think are really, really, as they all are, they're all powerful. And a reminder, what Scott is saying here and by the way, thanks to everybody who's tuning in right now and listening. Holy cow. Appreciate you doing that. And, for all your everybody's writing in, thank you for watching and giving us your feedback, enjoying the show. Thank you for doing that. One of them is accountability. Another one is visualization. And I think I want to talk about, because these are 2 steps that I think sometimes our ego gets in the way of accountability. And then I think we feel that visualization doesn't have a place when it comes to areas like procrastination. So let's start with those 2.
I love the visualization piece. So here's something like, I love creative visualization, by the way. I think I believe in manifestation, manifesting your future and visualizing the future that you want to have for yourself. But there's a flip side to this as well. Like, visualization does work, right? And I love it. And I have vision boards and all those things. But what I realize is, like, what about the anti-vision? So in other words, the anti-vision is the vision of what you're going to end up to be or not be if you do not follow through with your actions, right? And what I realized is, like, I started practicing this anti-vision piece where it's like, instead of visualizing the future that I wanted, I started to visualize the anti-vision of, like, the worst version of myself if I continued along this path of putting things off, not getting my finances right, ending up broke, and just like visualizing that really scared me. Like, that actually, that really bothered me. Like, it's like creating the worst version of myself. So as hard as it is, I'd recommend people to actually practice that, because what I found is that the anti-vision for me was more of a motivator than the actual, we'll call it like the positive vision of everything that I could be, so it's kind of like you got, I don't know, the little angel over here and the devil over here. The little devil, the anti-vision of myself, that guy's actually in control a lot of the times, where it's like, he's working more towards, self-sabotage, and we're not going to do all these things. We're going to go play and just have fun and all this. And the other part of me wants to be really productive and, build this global business and all these things. And they tend to, they don't really work very well together, of course, But yeah, the anti-vision is powerful. So here's what I do is I will sit down every night and I'll do my visualization practice. I mean, you can call it creative meditation or, however you want to do it. But I will sit down without the TV, without anything else on, of course, and just spending that 10, 15, 20 minutes alone with yourself. You don't have to go deep into thinking things through or anything, right? You can take that time and you can spend it however way you want to. But I will actually close my eyes and have the vision of, here's the vision of who I want to be. And then here's the vision of what I'm not going to become, like, the anti-vision of that, and just see which one really, like, how do they compare them? It's like, because each of them are tied to an emotion, right? I visualize myself, traveling around the world and, being on stage and giving these motivational speeches, and that feels great. But then the anti-vision of myself is like sitting by myself alone in a room, just like, I haven't achieved my dreams and I have nothing left and I'm broken. And I kind of like go through this anti-vision of that. And I'm like, that doesn't look very good. But, that vision right there is going to compel me to work on the things I need to get done so that I don't end up going down that trail, because I've been down that trail many times and I kind of like, it's like, it wasn't a lot of fun. Yeah. But it's like, I need to work on my behavior. We'll call it a negative behavior. I mean, it's like, again, a negative behavior is just anything that really sabotages you from accomplishing your dreams, like that's it.
Yeah.
And we all have them. Like, it's whether it's procrastination, it's the language you're speaking to yourself, positive or negative.
Right.
Like how you're speaking to yourself, that's a very powerful form of internal communication. So all these things, but I mean, just coming back to like, so at the end of the day, you need to take action, right? And that's really what it comes down to. So,
And I've got to take action right now because I have to do some sponsors real quick. So let me do this. His name is, he's #1 international best-selling author. It's How to Beat Procrastination. Do the hard things first. How to win over procrastination. Master the habit of doing difficult work. You're listening to Scott Allan here on A New Direction. Folks, listen, Epic Physical Therapy, I got to tell you something. They are absolutely outstanding. I love their people. They are certified in the most comprehensive cutting edge treatments available. They have the most top of line equipment available, things like the anti-gravity treadmill, Normatec compression sleeves, game ready. Listen, here's the deal. If you are looking for epic relief, epic recovery, and epic results, don't look any further. Go to epicpt.com. And listen, Linda Craft Team Realtors, I'm just going to tell you one thing. You want to know about Linda Craft Team Realtors? Go to lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com, because I'm going to tell you something. It's the most comprehensive real estate website you'll ever see. It absolutely is. Everything that you need, one-stop shopping right there. Whether you're looking for a home, want to buy a home, need to learn, there's so many learning. Their blog is constantly updated. They have the real estate right now show that they do. Check them out. It's lindacraft.com. You're going to be so glad that you did. LINDACRAFT.com. Scott, in our last segment here, and we're going through these steps, and you hit so many great steps. I got it. I have to do this. All right. Because you and I speak so much the same language, and that's the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle. And I thought it was so interesting that you would apply it to procrastination. And because I've never heard this application. Seriously, the 80-20 apply it to procrastination. And for those people who don't know what it is, the Pareto principle simply is this: 80% of your results often come from 20% of your effort. Okay. That's just the basic definition of it is. Tell us how we apply the 80-20 principle to overcoming procrastination.
For sure. So when I looked at the Pareto principle, I just love that principle because, exactly as you said, 80% of your results will come from 20% of what you're putting your time into, right? But what I found is that how it related to procrastination is because when I was putting off all the things, so let's just look at it this way. You got two circles. You got the 80% and the 20%. So the 20% piece of this is like, that's the stuff that if you were to really just focus on that stuff there, you'd probably have, monumental results. I mean, who knows what could happen, right? You're going to be just pushing forward. You're going to be killing it. You're going to be very productive and all that. But that's actually that wasn't the piece that I was focusing on. Over here, you got the 80%, which is all the other stuff, like all the, and maybe some of them are important and maybe not, but what it really came down to is identifying what my priorities were. And priorities are difficult because, again, when it came to identifying my priorities, well, I would prioritize the things that I wanted to do, not necessarily things that I had to get done. So you've got to be careful of that as well. Just be aware of it, right? But with the 80-20, I would, again, go to pen to paper, make two circles, and in the 20% piece of that circle, might be the smaller circle there, I want you to write down the things that to you, like, would be the needle movers? Like for me, it could be working on my next book, for example. Like, because if I work on my next book, I'm going to have more training for people, and it adds to my business, things like that. I don't always want to do that, but then again, I have to overcome my emotion of like not wanting to do something with it needs to get done because it's going to have a monumental impact on my business and hopefully the future lives of everybody else that's going to be reading it. So I have to identify in that 20%, what are the things that I really need to do? Over here, the 80%, these are the things that it's all the other stuff, by the way. Like, and that can be, it can be like, checking your email can go into the 80%. We've also got the Eisenhower matrix where, you got four areas divided up like that. I mean, that works as well, but I found like just identifying what that 20% is, that core 20%. If you can just focus on that, and I'm not saying ignore that stuff in the 80%, by the way, there's probably stuff in there that you can't ignore, but it's stuff that you don't have to be, because for me, I spend all my time or most of it in the 80%, doing all those things that I wanted to do, and things that were fun and like time wasting, by the way, like checking email 10 times a day, all that stuff. I put everything into that circle. And the reason you want to have it written down in front of you is so you can identify it. So when you are scrolling through TikTok, by the way, which might be in that 80%. And by the way, I love scrolling through TikTok. Just so you know, I love watching puppy videos. I really do. Like, it's a thing with me. But I catch myself all the time when I'm in the middle of my workflow. Next thing you know, I'm looking at videos of duck sound. I have like duck sounds, like 3 of them. So I'm always looking at those videos, like, oh, there I am again doing this thing that I should.
Well, it's such a black hole, right? I mean, it becomes such a black hole that you get sucked down, and then the next thing you know, I had to take it off my phone. I literally had to remove the app from my phone, because it was that 80%, because I was doing it initially to see what kind of results I was getting, right? I was checking, because you put up the videos, you want to check your results. And I would do that, but it became this 80% thing, which is, it's minorly important because I want to see, kind of catch trends. But there's 20% of the things that I do that will be so much more significant to benefit me that I've got to stay focused on. And as you say, I have to take extreme ownership of my own behavior in this thing, right? And because that's your first step. I mean, your first step is you own your own behavior. You are the cap. You say it. You are the captain of your own ship called Living Success is the name of the ship, right? Living successfully. That's the name of your ship. You're the captain. Yeah. And I think that's where we get into trouble, is that we're working on these 80% things, but they're really not they're accomplishing something, but they're not accomplishing what's important.
Right. That might have been one of the first steps in the book, I think, is like take total responsibility for your actions, right? Because and I love that, by the way. Like, that's a great point, because at the end of the day, it's like I'm actually working on a new book. We're going to test it with a blog post probably, but it's like, everything is my fault, like, it's like you start from that, like, it's like everything, I'm responsible for everything. Right. And that just right away, that just levels the playing field for you, because if you realize that, then you realize, like, okay, like, I'm no longer blaming these people for this and that. I'm not complaining about things. I basically, like, it's all my faults. That's not a bad thing, by the way. You're just owning up to everything. And if you start from that, right, first of all, forgive yourself right away, realize everything is your fault. In other words, you're responsible for where you end up at the end of the day. And that's just a great place to start from, because from there, it's like, okay, well, it's up to me, which means, it puts you in control of your life. Right.
Right. Well, it does. It puts you complete control of your life. And I want to move on here a little bit, just because we're running out of time. We're down to our last about 6 minutes. And I would love to get your thoughts on a couple of these things. One is called breaking your limited self-talk. Your limiting self-talk, because you make a point here in the book that says your self-talk is persuasive and it becomes a habit. And you repeat your negative self-talk, you become what you say to yourself. I don't know that we understand as human beings very well that we create who we are largely by what we say to ourselves and about ourselves.
Hmm.
And we say things to ourselves that we would never say to our best friend.
Hmm.
And my question becomes, why are you not your own best friend and not say those things to yourself? Talk about limited self-talk as it applies to procrastination and how it applies.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll start with just what I was referring to later, earlier about the labeling, right? So we label ourselves with many things. I'm a procrastinator. I'm this and I'm that, right? So when it came to tackling the negative self-talk, and this is something, I mean, you can go way back to your childhood and wherever it started and all that, but at the end of the day, like I would actually, I would sit down and I would actually observe my thoughts, listen to my thoughts. What are the things I'm telling myself? I started with, and this was just really in the last probably 6 months, I started tackling this monster, was the scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset was something like within that, I had so many messages that like every day is like, I can't make money. I'm broke. I'm just, everything was related to my scarcity mindset. And all of that self-talk was just keeping me in the scarcity mindset. So I realized like, okay, I want to break that scarcity mindset. What's the language I need to use to go from that to the abundance mindset? Right. So whatever it is that you're dealing with, right? You have limiting self-talk that's keeping you stuck, right? And it really is, because you're programming yourself, to think and feel this way. And when you think and feel a certain way, you become that person. Right. But here's the thing. The great thing about programming, just like anything else, you can reprogram your thinking, or reprogram the way that you're talking to yourself. I actually really like, I think Mel Robbins, book, she talks about this a lot, like the mirror technique. I started standing in front of the mirror every morning, talking to myself for 5 or 10 minutes. Do I like it? No. But I found that it was very effective when I just first thing in the morning, because that's really when I wake up first thing in the morning, that's when everything just those negative thoughts and the negative thinking starts from right away. Like it's just, so you've got to get in front of the mirror, or you've got to sit down and do meditation, whatever it takes to work, and start to talk to yourself in a way like a friend. But you have to be clear on, like, what is it that you're going to say? It's kind of like a script from the movie, right? You don't just maybe just show up and, maybe some actors do after they get really good at it, but I need to have a script when I show up. Right. So, either that morning or probably the night before is when I'll write down the script. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to stand in front of the mirror and I'm going to say these 5 things, to myself, like, hey, you're awesome because, you're great because. And a lot of people are afraid to say those things to themselves. We might say them to colleagues, might say that to our boss, might say that to whoever, or to our loved ones. But very few people will actually say that to themselves, because first of all, we think like, well, I don't really deserve to be, I shouldn't be calling myself that. I'm not that, I haven't done anything great. And that's where it begins. It's like, I haven't done these things. So it's like, well, you have to project yourself into the future, right? Like, again, okay, you got the anti-vision of you and you got the other vision of you. Well, to get to the other vision of you, the greatest version of yourself, you don't wait for that day to come. Start right now. You're already there. As Gary Vaynerchuk said, like, you've made it. You've got like a 1 in a billion chance that you're here on Earth. You've made it already. So what's holding you back? I just live by that, right? So just just start with something really simple, like, hey, if you want to tell yourself you love yourself, I highly recommend that. Hey, I love you because, and like, just come up with, you don't have to justify it. You're already great. Now start telling yourself you are, right.
Well, and speaking of which, you are great. And I sadly, our time is run out. We've already done our time.
You might have to have a part 2 some days.
If you're open to it, I'd love to have you back on a part 2. People are really responding to this show. I mean, people, I'm watching people chat and give us love and everything. So if you're open to doing a part 2, I would love to do part 2 with you.
Yeah, I was just getting going, so sure.
Yeah. Well, do all of them a favor for me, if you would, please. Tell them how they can get a hold of your material. How do they? Is there a way they can interact with you if they've got questions? How do they hire you for speaking? If they want training or coaching, how do they go about doing that? Would you please give them that information?
Sure, yeah. So they can go to, I have two websites, but the one I'd recommend is scottallenbooks.com. We have a relatively new website. They can go there and check out the books. And then scottallenpublishing.com. They can go there. They can send a message through there, or Scott Allan at scottallenpublishing.com as well. I am working on a course for this. It's going to be ready within the next 2 months. It's going to be really excited about it. So when that releases, if you get onto my email list, then you'll get the notifications for that when it's ready. And like I said, I'm working on a third edition of the book that I think is going to be way better. Like, the current version is good. I just want to make it amazing, right? So,
Yeah.
and again, I'm just taking feedback from people, and just listening to their stories and everything. Because I'm always in the, I always I'll put something out there, let it do its thing for like a year, get feedback, and then just make it better. And that's kind of how I work with all my products. So.
That's awesome. Scott, thanks for being on. Stay with me, will you please? Folks, that's the show. You know what? Do the hard things first, right? You know what? You are the captain of your own ship. It's called Successful Living is the name of that boat. Do that. I tell you that you're in control of three things in your life. It's your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. The fact of the matter is, life is going to throw a bunch of things at you, but how you respond to it is what really matters. The fact that matters, you're in control of your attitude, right? And it can be positive or it can be negative, but you choose it ultimately. And you're in control of your effort, and your effort is tied to your excellence. So you have to make a choice. How excellent are you going to be today? And we all get punched in the gut or punched in the mouth. It's up to you to be resilient. Get back up. Get back up, because can I tell you something? You're worth it. I'm telling you are. I'll be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book, which automatically means I'm going to have another great show. You had a lot of choices. You chose us. Thank you. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Write us a 5-star review wherever you watch or listen to the show. As I say to you all over the world, you know what that is. Ciao, everybody.